Welcome to the Vet S.O.S podcast. Remember, don't try to see a transition, grab the Vet S.O.S Lifeline. You're going to make me bring the music back, aren't you, Keith?
I want the music. It's so awkward without the intro music.
Today we're sitting down with someone who's not a veteran himself, but is doing some amazing work to assist and help our service members and veterans around the world. Really excited to jump into this conversation. There's some interesting work going on, and I think it's something that's going to intrigue a lot of people. So here with the dancing fool, how you doing today, Keith?
Dancing. Well, you got the full part right. I've been known to not needing a lot of copious amounts of alcohol to get the dancing part going, and I don't do that no more either. So we'll just stick with the full part. I'm well. I didn't even answer the question. I'm well. I never answered the question. I usually just fire back at whatever silliness you fire at me. But I'm good, Sean. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and my dancing career ended with alcohol as well. So there's no more dancing in this future.
No, Paul is like, what in the world am I getting myself into?
Nope. 22 years sober myself. So
there you go.
Nice.
There you go. All right. So today's guest has lived an extraordinary life at the intersection of finance, academia, addiction, recovery, and trauma healing. Paul Schulte spent decades as an international banking executive, university professor, and author before finding a new calling, helping people recover from PTSD, trauma, burnout, and addiction through EMDR therapy. Now more than 2 decades sober, Paul draws from his own experiences overcoming alcoholism, sexual abuse, imposter syndrome, and burnout to help veterans, survivors, and others break free from the lasting effects of trauma. In this conversation, we're going to explore how EMDR works, why it's been such a powerful tool for treating PTSD, and why Paul believes no one has to remain trapped by the wounds of their past. Love the work you're doing, Paul. You and I have talked before. Really excited to get into some of the experiences you've had with this and some of the work you've done. But before we do that, how you doing?
Great. We're just in boiling hot Barcelona. It is end of a heat wave finally. So we have had anywhere between 40, so 115 degrees right around there. And so we're getting a little cooler today.
That doesn't sound fun. And I'm assuming it's like most of Europe where there's no central air.
Yeah, I got a fan and a mini air con going right now.
Yep. Don't miss those days. Don't miss those at all.
Man,
all right. So
add the 40-pound kit and you're downrange again.
There you go. So let's start with what made you want to work with veterans? Like, well, how did that journey happen?
Well, I myself, a long time ago, I worked at the White House and the National Security Council with under an admiral in naval intelligence. And so I was a civilian, but I was working on national security issues all around the world. And so I did that for a few years. And then I decided to leave. I myself am the youngest of 10 kids. My mom is an immigrant. My dad is from Missouri. And so my parents had me when they were 43. That means they turned 18 in 1942. And so both of them were shipped off to Asia and fought in the Pacific War for 5 years under Mountbatten, under the combined British command of Mountbatten. And, my parents came back. My father had terrible, undiagnosed, untreated PTSD and was an extremely angry, rageful alcoholic. And this is all about his PTSD. And we didn't know what that word was. It was never treated. It was never talked about. It was this giant, raging elephant in the room. And so I myself grew up with that. So I have decades of my own, right? I hope treated PTSD from my own father's rageful, violent, abusive behavior toward members of the family. And so that got me into this. And then I had some friends in Kyiv. And so I decided to go to Kyiv. I spent a lot of last year writing the book about EMDR. And I spent several months in Kyiv in the wintertime working with Army psychologists there.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And I don't know that, Kyiv's a great vacation spot in the winter, but, it's definitely cooler than where you are right now. So
especially in the bomb shelters.
there you go. There you go. So let's lay the baseline then. Let's go ahead and tell us about EMDR and what that is.
Okay, so I myself was introduced to it like 7 or 8 years ago. I did it recommended by a friend, and I was blown away by how effective it was on things that I was dealing with. Uh, uh, Part of it was my father's, my father's rage and violence. And I was so astounded how I was able to resolve things that were unresolvable for decades in 3 or 4 hours. And so I just said, aha, there's something here. And then I did a lot of reading. I wrote the book on EMDR, and then I was looking at all these peer-reviewed research, and what we're seeing probably in the last, I would say, 6 to 7 years, where you have ministries of defense everywhere, basically Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada, the UK, and now Ukraine, uh, having EMDR as the first stop for PTSD, and a lot of peer-reviewed research. EMDR is the first baseline treatment for PTSD. So that said, this is important. Pay attention to this.
It's fascinating. I've heard a little bit about it even before you and I had talked, but it's not something I've tried. How about you, Keith?
No, I definitely, no, yeah, I never tried it. Always been curious about it. I've always been intrigued by any of that kind of stuff, that kind of treatment. But no, I've so far just always gone the traditional counseling route, maybe some medications here and there.
Well,
Used to
I will do it.
self-medicate, as we talked about earlier with the alcohol, but got rid of
I'll
that.
do it for you for free. I'll do it for you guys for free. I
There
promise.
you go. That's a hard,
Okay.
hard deal to turn down.
Right? Yeah. So
So
how does this work? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so that's right. So two things. One, when when we remember a traumatic memory of violence or abuse or sexual assault or an explosion, or my best friend, getting killed, in all these different ways. I've worked with soldiers in the past. The way that our five senses remember them is very fragmented, because I'm sure you guys understand. You go down the road and you smell something, and it brings back the memory of something that happened, or you see somebody's face, or you hear something. And so this tells us that the five senses remember traumatic memory in very fragmented ways. A second part of this is time. Time is very fragmented in the base of our brain, where all of this trauma is stored. When we are in a traumatic situation, our frontal lobe, our frontal cortex for logic, for consequences, for understanding, it is offline. We are in fight or flight mode. And so the second part of this is that the way that we remember things is in pure emotion, in the amygdala, in the lizard brain. And when you have these pure emotions that are all fragmented by senses and fragmented in time, no wonder why it's so difficult and frightening when we bring these things up to the front brain to talk about them in talk therapy. Talk therapy doesn't work for this. EMDR gets the two sides of the brain to start to talk to each other, and it brings forward these things, and it gives the event and the emotion three-dimensionality. This happened to me. I came to believe this, and I felt this. And when you put these three things together, you get a lot of clarity about just what happened, what I was feeling, and very importantly, what I came to believe about myself at the time of the event. And that's really the magic of EMDR, which is really a fairly new phenomenon in the last 15 years. And so our right side of our brain is that narrative, right? It's that story. The other side of the brain is people, place, thing, time, and this is bringing it together, right? So an event gets a narrative, gets a story, and when we do that, a lot of the fear that we felt, because it's so difficult to bring this to the frontal part of the brain when you're in talk therapy, a lot of the fear diminishes very quickly, and we can start to get objectivity and detachment. So eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. I like the word desensitized as detachment. I like the word reprocess as re-understanding. And so you're detaching and you're understanding anew what happened to you.
It's
That's
it's definitely fascinating.
yeah.
It's one of those things that I don't know, what do we call them, alternative therapies or something at the VA. I don't remember what they call it, but it's one of those that I've read great results. Paul, you and I have talked about some of the results you've
Mhm.
personally seen and been a
Mhm.
part of. And, it's like, if we're having this kind of level of success, why is this something that's more widely talked about, pushed, utilized, especially in the veteran community? And I don't know the answer to that, but, I'd love to
I
hear.
do.
Okay. Share the answer, and then we'll talk about your time in Kiev a little bit more.
Well, I think part of it is, you guys. I think part of it is that this is a big threat to talk therapy, right? Because it just says that the logical approach to deep, emotional trauma by talking about things just doesn't work, right? There is a disconnect. And so this is a very big threat to the whole industry of talk therapy, whatever you want to call it, cognitive behavioral therapy, family systems, and so forth. And so I will present to you right now that I think that EMDR will overtake talk therapy in 5 years. It's that big of a deal. And I spent a
Nice.
year writing the book on that. And I have done this with hundreds of people and with privates and captains and majors and colonels. And it's been the results. And I spent time in the Army hospital in Kiev as well. The results are astounding.
So,
Uh,
but before we, I want to ask your opinion on something though too. Like not just like why it's EMDR hasn't like taken off more, but also like I, I've been a strong believer that our fears, our stress, our trauma has its own survival instinct, right? And that what I mean by
Hmm.
that is that like, you know, there were times where I knew I needed help, but I was afraid to get like my fear was like afraid to get like it was like no you don't need the help kind of thing, and it wasn't
Yeah.
even ego like the service members, yeah, we have egos and we don't think we need help, but there I think there's like almost like a self preservation aspect to where we're comfortable in our trauma. It's there, we've almost come to embrace it. And so people that are listening to this this EMDR thing, like, and they may have that reaction in their head like that trauma is like no, you don't need me, you don't need to get rid of me, or you need me and you don't need to get rid of me. Like what would you
Hmm.
say to folks
Yeah.
like that are kind of struggling with those kinds of block obstacles?
Yeah, that's a good insight. Yeah, well, first of all, I always say that our ego is not our amigo, and so our ego likes 3 square meals a day. Our ego likes to be in the self-imposed prison because in prison we get 3 square meals a day. We get 1 hour of recreation time, and we get a bed, and we get like nice clothes to wear every day, and everything's taken care of. It does take courage. There's no doubt about it. I worked with people who were resistant to it, and I worked with people who were not resistant to it. And it's worked in both cases. And the people who were some of the most resistant to it were some of the people in the Army intelligence, in the SBU. And they were the ones who walked away the most surprised about how effective it was. And so I got to say, yeah, your insight is spot on. But it takes a little bit of courage to say, you can do this, and you don't need to spend a year on a couch. This is supposed to be done with 6 to 10 hours of therapy. I have done this over and over and over again. It's a quick therapy. It's not designed. That's why, for the army of the Ukraine to pull people off the front line in the middle of a war to do EMDR training, it's important.
So tell us more about that. Like, tell us more about your experience there in Ukraine and the real world application you were seeing.
That's right. There's something in the background too, that for a lot of veterans, 80% of veterans with PTSD came from broken families where there was a lot of abuse, divorce, and so forth, right? 80, right? And so what I was astounded by, both with the Army psychologists and with the Army intelligence people who were on the front line, there's two parts of the process. I think the first part is my best friend got killed, my best friend got blown up. All that was there was a pair of boots. Somebody in front of me was assaulted. I was at a POW camp, and so forth. And there's that trauma, and that's important in its own right. There's something else that goes on that's really important as well. And the second part of this is where you go and maybe spend another 2 hours. What did your father tell you when you were 14, 15, 16, 12? You're a coward. You're never going to make it. What did your mother say? You're never going to make it. You're going to drop out. And so a lot of these guys have got trauma, and women too, women especially, trauma from what their experiences of physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and they bring that into their adult life. And when you can deal with the initial trauma, and then I like to call this the moral, right, the moral injury, right, of childhood abuse. These two things come together, and that's where the beauty occurs. I'll give you an example. A major was fighting for years, right, and then he finally went into a basement and found a bunch of kids that had been in there for a week, and he was devastated. He broke down, and I was like, okay, let's talk about that. Let's see what's going on. And essentially, he asked them, "Where's your parents?" And they said, "They're in that building across the street." Well, there is no building, and they said, "Yeah, I know, they're all dead." And so and it really hit him so hard about his own childhood and about the way that his mother had treated him. And when we spent about an hour on the way that his mother had treated him, we went back and I said, "Now tell me what's going on. Tell me what you believe and what you're feeling about those kids in that basement." And he said, "It's neutral. It's just not there anymore, right?" And I did the same thing with a captain who was leaving Bakhmut, where the town was devastated. A woman was going back in. She was looking for her son, and they said, "There's no one left. There's no one alive. Get on the troop carrier. We're leaving." And the woman got on, and that guy had fought very bravely for weeks. But when he saw the woman, he broke down. And I said, "Did you have anybody who's a woman in your life who might have had a lot of pain or died recently?" He said, "Yeah, my mother died of cancer 2 years ago, and I wasn't there. I had no time to grieve." Right. And he just made that connection. That woman looked like his mother, and so we need to look at both ends of this. And of course, as you guys remember, the end of the Soviet Union was a catastrophe, right? The economy fell apart, society fell apart. It was a failed state, and in failed states, there's very high levels of alcoholism, abuse, and so forth. And that was what Ukraine was facing from 1990 to maybe 2005, right? And so there was a lot of abuse and alcoholism, addiction, and broken families. And so I saw a lot of that with the people that I worked with.
It's fascinating. I love the real world application. I can't even talk anymore. Real world application, Keith. What about you?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is powerful stuff. I'm really interested, and so we're almost at time, Paul. So I hate this because I want to get so much deeper into it, but so you said it's different from talk therapy. Like what can people expect? Just because you said it's like, not a year on a couch. It's, I think you said 6 to 10 hours. Like, is that 6 to 10 hours all at once? Are we spending an entire work day with you kind of thing for 6 to 10 hours? Or do you break it up? Like, kind of what's some of the practical application? And is it something they are taught in those sessions to apply throughout the rest of their life? Or is it kind of a one and done kind of thing?
Yeah, great point. In my experience, it's one and done. First of all, some people come back for like a little bit of a tune-up, but it is basically for people who are motivated. I've done it with 2 to 3 hours in one setting, intensive EMDR. and we could go for 2, maybe 3 days, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes twice a week, 3 times a week. Essentially, you do about 1.5 to 2 minutes of eye movement, and there's always 2 questions. What do you see? What do you feel? All of EMDR is talking from the heart. I tell people to turn off your brain. We're talking from the heart. We're getting to the heart of the matter in the emotions and in the beliefs. And once those come out, the fear level and the anxiety level tends to really collapse in the first session. And then you go into some other areas, other things come up. But yeah, normally around 2 to 3 hours, not a lot of talking. It's not talk therapy. It's very short sentences, short words, phrases, and people tend to really prefer that over having to go round in circles using talk therapy. I think talk therapy and emotional trauma are talking past each other.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sean?
I'm fascinated by the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where there's so many different types of services, right? And, we learn a little bit about, ones through the show, we've learned through some research, whatever, and there's all kinds of new things coming out continuously. Like, we've had that conversation about psychedelics, so that's a route a lot of veterans are taking. And, to me, it's important to figure out what works for you. I don't know if we've discovered. I mean, everybody has their opinion, right? What is this is the only thing that truly works, and I get it. Everybody has their discipline that they support. For me, I just care that our community finds what works for them.
Amen, brother. Amen. Yeah, exactly. So people who finish 52 weeks of talk therapy, around 5%. The accepted number, success rate for EMDR in peer-reviewed research is somewhere like 80%.
Wow.
And it's a very short period of time. And so I work with it with women, men, colonels, captains, majors, privates, civilians, refugees, a woman whose husband is a POW. I've worked with soldiers with mild traumatic brain injury. It's really effective. You can start from 8 years old all the way to 75. And so I've gone, and I'm working with refugees here in Barcelona, Russian refugees and Ukrainian refugees, because the refugee population has it really tough as well. They're very devastated by what's happening. And right now there's wars in 54 countries. There are more than 100 million refugees out there from war. And this is more refugees than we've had since World War II. And so that's something else that my work has been aimed at as well.
Well, I love it. I love the work you're doing. I love the fact that you care to try to help people, and definitely encourage you to continue with that, and encourage anybody who wants to learn more, reach out, to Paul here, check out his book, check out his work, see if it's something you want to try, something that might work for you. But
Yeah.
Keith, it's about that time, brother.
It is, and unfortunately, yeah, we do have to wrap this up, which breaks my heart because I want to keep going. But Paul, just so that our folks out there that are interested in learning more or partaking in your services or supporting what you do in the services, how can they get in touch with you? How can they either sign up or just reach out to you with questions?
www.emdrbypaul.com.
Easy, emdrbypaul.com. Nice.
Yeah.
Is there a contact thing on that page too, I presume?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so
Keith,
much for coming
yeah.
on. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead,
Thank
please.
you, Keith. Thank you, Sean. Thank you guys so much for your time, and thank you for what you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, our pleasure. And yeah, thank you for coming on, especially from all the way overseas on the other side of the pond. Try to stay cool over there. But yeah,
awful.
And on behalf of the entire S.O.S family, we want to thank everyone for spending their time with us today. It's always great having you along for the ride. Don't forget to check out all of our other episodes and keep coming back for more stories, insight, and support from the Vet S.O.S crew. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a follow, share the show, and tell a friend or two. Toss your battle buddies, fire team, shipmates, and wingmen that flotation device that they need in transition so no one drowns in the sea of transition. And as always, grab the Vet S.O.S Lifeline.